everyone, this is Ava from Soul GPS. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to share with you some of my recent discoveries that I have had with respect to recovery from narcissistic abuse, but also what may have led to it in the first place. And of course, we've discussed already many times on this channel familial abuse and being familiar with violence at home and being put down and being groomed to becoming an empath and becoming a codependent. And that definitely plays a big role. But today I wanted to share with you some other factors that I've been able to excavate that may even go deeper and more into the subconscious realm of the way we operate in our society and what may be motivating us to jump into some of those toxic relationships without giving it enough thought, without engaging our logic and our reason, but rather to kind of dive in and be driven into something that then ends up devastating us. Before I jump in, super quick, I just want to thank you, all of you, so very much for your beautiful emails that you've been sending me and sharing your stories. And I would really, really love to respond to all of them. Unfortunately, I am absolutely incapable of doing this because I'm like a party of one. And but if you do want to get a response, usually it takes me 2 to 3 days to respond to email inquiries, which are packages I have available on my website. You can check those out, and you're definitely going to get a comprehensive long answer from me relatively quickly. If you just send me your story, I appreciate you so much sharing it with me. But like I said, I get so many of them, I'm unable to share to respond to all of them. As much as I would just so love to. So what I try to do is kind of come up with themes of things that come up regularly in bulk and then make a video about it. So that's kind of how I'm tackling it. But I just want you to know that you're being heard, that I'm sending you all just so much love and compassion, knowing what some of you are going through. It is so heartbreaking. But I also know that this is a blessing. This is a blessing in disguise, even though it doesn't feel like that in the moment. And we're going to talk about how that is a blessing in this video too. So, okay, let's jump in. The two unconscious or subconsciously driving us factors that could be really affecting us. So what happens in those relationships? Like, you may notice that it's a relationship where there's a power differential, right? There's always somebody, like the other person has a one up on you. It's power and control, right? Narcissists always power and control. So I found that it stems from a deep unconscious desire that the empath possesses to either save someone or to be saved by them. And oftentimes it's both. And now, where does this stem from? It's really tricky. It stems from fairy tales. I mean, it's like kind of like some of us wouldn't ever think of it. But when you think of all the myths that we get exposed to in our childhood, the Cinderella stories, the Sleeping Beauty stories, and so on and so forth, we always have that. We grew up, especially girls. I'm going to talk about boys in just a second, but girls grow up with this idea of, like, life is tough. It's really, it is tough. It is difficult. But like, oftentimes our goal, rather than it becoming self-actualization, which is not something that is promoted or propagated by the media or school systems, and so on, it's something you need to kind of discover on your own. But instead of that, what many of us think about, meeting our prince, being saved from this oppressive environment most of us grew up in, and having a different life. So what happens is that we become vulnerable to the narcissist that comes up and then hones in on our core wounds, which are oftentimes, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, I'm not wanted, and so on. And I'm going to say, no, you are more than good enough. You're so wanted. I want you so, so much, and you're just perfect, and this and that. We're familiar with all of that. So we feel like, oh, our savior has arrived, right? So now there's the other side of the coin that deals a little bit more with the male role in this whole equation. Again, this is something we're exposed to since we're kids, since we're little, like 3, 4, 5 years old, the stories we get read to by our parents. So, or we watch on TV. And it propagates through the rest of Hollywood. You know, it's like that story is in almost every romantic comedy and almost, you know, every blockbuster movie. So on the male side, we have the knight, the savior. And if you are an empathic person who has a tendency of validating their own value by what you can do for the other as opposed to for yourself, and knowing your intrinsic value, then you may fall for that, right? You may fall for that role. And then you're looking for this vulnerable girl. Oftentimes it's like more on the covert narcissist, or the borderline. Lots of borderline traits will definitely light up that desire, that drive in those men to want to like save this woman from the oppression, right? And of course, there are situations in life, even in healthy relationship, when it's really nice to be there for someone, and so, but I'm not talking about that. It's something different. These relationships are completely something else than this power differential, one-upping the other. And while in the beginning, you know, fulfilling these roles, like not only do you have these familial wounds that we're trying to work out by seeking validation from the other person and love from the other person, the love that we haven't gotten as kids, but also we're like, oh, we're fulfilling this societal expectation of, you know, being the princess or being the knight and you know, living happily ever after, which never happens, right? It can't, because these relationships are uneven. They are they're unequal. So if we want to talk for a moment about a relationship that would be healthy, it would have to be based on equality, and it would have to come from a sovereign place for each individual where they have been able to complete themselves rather than seeking completion in the other person. And then in their partnership, they're looking more of complement as opposed to completion. And then it doesn't matter, you know, whether they're different. There's a difference of opinion. One likes yoga, the other one likes boxing. It's like, it doesn't matter, because the differences are actually become a really attractive factor. But that sets the DNA for a good relationship, is that respect, it's that reverence for another person's spirit. And I know if you're watching this video, this is what you've been seeking all of your life. And that possibility is out there for you. I want you to know that it is out there for you. But before you reach out, and you need to like prepare yourself for this form of partnership, because oftentimes, especially after we've been gone through so much abuse in our homes, in school, in workplaces, and then in toxic relationships, we're really not ready we wouldn't even recognize a partner like that. And that partner who is already on that level wouldn't really recognize us, because we have some work to do. So that's what I want to talk about. And so the one source of this subconscious drive then becomes this fairy tale myth kind of drive that you know, our society is permeated by and infused by, and this expectation. And I want to talk about this expectation and a little bit further and spill it over a little bit farther into familial expectation. Because what happens so often, I hear that so often from my clients, is that there is this, once we get into the family stuff, right? Like they often grow up and they get involved with these abusers because their families kind of like wants to almost push them out of their nest and say, well, okay, well, it's time for you. Like, go and, you know, do your own thing and bring me grandkids. And I remember that was kind of the case with me for a while, is that I felt like, you know, I would get into these really toxic, dangerous relationships. But I wouldn't get any objective criticism or advice from my family to say like, wait a minute, that's kind of like, that's not okay. Maybe you should not put up with that. You know, maybe that's a red flag. Like, none of that, right? One is because they didn't know themselves, because they were either abused or abusers or conditioned. And, you know, we've been all steeping the cauldron of lies and deceit for way too many years. So I didn't have that. And instead, what I had this, okay, well, I want a grandkid soon. Like, why don't you just like, oh, okay, you're with this guy. Awesome. You know, get on it, get married, have this. And then, you know, being a woman in my 30s, a single woman in my 30s, living in the Bay Area, it was almost like a curse to be single. You know, it's like I had to learn to walk with dignity and be okay with that. And that was an amazing journey and super empowering, by the way. And, but you get the societal pressure, like, okay, well, why don't you have this and have that, blah, 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 blah. So I want you to be aware of those things, and whether And ask yourself whether they may have played a role too. Because as you're recovering, like, I would like you to go in and pull all the roots out, at least if you're unable to pull them out, because that does take some work and some rewriting and reconditioning, retraining of the nervous system, at least to be aware, because awareness in and of itself has curative properties, meaning that if you just look at a pattern of something that you do regularly, rather than judging yourself or trying to, change it, just observe those patterns. And then awareness itself is going to make you notice, like, oh, I just did A, and as a result, I feel like this. Maybe I shouldn't do that again. So you're having a much deeper experience as a result. So at least to be aware of those things. So we're going to attract these kinds of people, it's almost like we're begging for it. I know I was, I didn't know that. I thought that I had my life more or less put together, but I ended up attracting some really bad characters, really dark characters. So instead of the notion of growing in love, which is what a healthy relationship should be, what we experience is falling in love. And I equate that with falling asleep. And there we go, Sleeping Beauty, right? Falling asleep. You get into those relationships, it feels great, there's fireworks, and then before you know it, you fall back into those old patterns. And for me, these were the patterns of serve, 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 give, give, give. And for my partner, it was the give a tiny little bit, little sprinkles, little crumbs, and then expect, and take, and I'll be more than willing to do. But I was so unconscious. These relationships were so bad, like looking in hindsight. I mean, there were some value in them. I've learned a lot about this and this and that. There were some good moments, but those moments were really not worth it compared to the way I've been treated and how I've been, denigrated, and then all the work I needed to do to recover from all of that, which that's going to take us to the next part of this video, was actually a huge blessing. And here is why. Many of us empaths, and people who give, like notoriously, we are trained since we're kids to take a lot on our shoulders, which kind of conditions us to have a very high pain threshold. So we don't know when too much is too much. We just kind of expand our capacity, and then we do more. And then we expand a little bit more, and then we do more. So it's kind of like working out. You just keep lifting heavier weights and heavier weights, which is great at the gym. But it's horrible in a relationship that's abusive, because you learn to tolerate more and more, and you learn to diminish your own needs, your own desires, which is what happened to me. I had that moment, I think I mentioned in one of my videos, where I felt like my fire got diminished to this tiny little candle flame that was barely alive, after 6 years in one of my relationships. And I got kind of scared, because I felt like it was close to dying out and me becoming somebody that I wasn't. Somebody I was conditioned to become in order to fulfill the other person's expectations. This is how badly I wanted to be loved, wanted and accepted. I was like, had I realized the degree to which I wasn't given that in my childhood, I would have probably, hit my face on the wall or something. It would have been very devastating. So I needed to grow up to the point where the pain of changing that was less than the pain of staying in that dynamic. So I want you to think about this for a moment. And this is where the grace is hiding, because changing is not easy. Like, people just we keep postponing things. It's uncomfortable. You got to grow all these new neural connections, which is a great thing, very healthy. But it requires work and focus and this and that, and it's stressful. It's a good form of stress. Some stress is good, but it's hard. So we tend to default into our own patterns. When we get to this point, it's like we're being pushed off a cliff, and we're having to grow our wings on the way down, or hit the ground and then pick up the pieces. In either case, it feels horrible when it's happening. I remember I was really in pain for a few months. I think that YouTube videos and a Game of Thrones saved me, because I watched all 6 seasons in 2 months. So I was going between YouTube videos on narcissism and Game of Thrones. The YouTube and Game of Thrones, that was my life. I was in pajamas in my bed all the time. 2 months, I kid you not, with tiny little breaks going outside to get some fresh air, because I had to, and that helped big time. So my self-care was really minimal at the time, but it was there. So why do we do this? We want to escape the original pain, and we don't want to look at that. But what we need to do is we need to face it. So it's very painful. The change is painful. The facing of it is very painful. But once we get splattered on the ground, once our life gets devastated, that is the opportunity. That is the moment when we are raw and open. And again, I know this feels horrible because you're like, you have nettle stings all over your body. It's like you've been burned and all of your nerves are exposed and everything hurts, and the memories, right? The trauma bond, all of that stuff, and the cognitive dissonance, like, was it me? Was it him? Was it her? Was it what's like all of that? It's just like, whoa, it's like living in a hurricane, a mental and emotional hurricane, 24/7. And I want to say this to you real quick, because this is really important to remember. Like, if you're experiencing yourself, say 99% hurricane, 1% peace, like you have these little moments of see-through clouds, know that those moments will increase and the hurricane will die down. And I know that you're looking for like a quick resolution. It's sort of like getting the drug back in your vein, right? Or it's like, I'm sorry, I have to go there because it just came up. But it's like when you're sexually aroused, right? Like you just want to like get over the edge and get that tension out. But imagine like if you can't, like you're getting yourself up to a certain point and then you have to like let it diminish and then you go back and it's so frustrating because the nervous system wants to release it and you can't. And the only way to release it is by going back to the abuser temporarily and getting that dose again. But what is that going to do? That's only going to prolong the pain and the recovery. And I used to be wired this way myself. So I was looking for a quick resolution. I need that quick relief. And going through this process has taught me that there's a different way. And it retrained my own nervous system. And it's made me so much more expanded as an individual, not just psychologically, but also just from biologically, just from a nervous system standpoint. Like I can take so much more emotion. I can hold it and just be a witness to it and just breathe into it and feel that pain and like connect with that rawness of it and get into that anger. And I used to run away from all that. And I didn't know how much I was missing out because I couldn't feel completely. I was scared. I was too scared. I was on like my range of feelings was actually pretty shallow. It's like an octave, 2 octaves of singing, 2 octaves of music, pretty shallow. Now it's like 6, 7 octaves because I can go down into the pain and hold it and feel it. And I can also be super elated. So it's amazing how working out your pain and sorrow can actually make you also give you the capacity to feel so much more joy. So that's what's ahead. I want you to know this. So while you're going through this process, better days are ahead. Better days are ahead. It's actually the best days of your life are still ahead because you're putting yourself intact. You're taking that child that was abandoned, by doing your work and you're able to like grow her so that she can be authentic and you can become the person you were always intended to be, as opposed to the person you've been conditioned to be because you've been seeking love and validation. So we need to face it, right? So that was my story, not to keep this video super long, but just real quick. And it took me a while to see this pattern. When you're in it, it's hard to see it. You got to be outside of it. And having gone through narcissistic abuse and having left that situation, that gives you that really unique, difficult to attain, super precious outside perspective. So you can look at yourself from the outside. Really hard to do normally. And the more work you do on yourself, the more you'll be able to see your life more objectively and change the pattern. So for me, it was, when I was 17, I left home in Poland to study in English, to study in California, study English. And I ended up staying there for like 19 years. And I'm in Europe right now, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to go back. But for now, I'm just traveling, just FYI. Not that you care, but just want to let you know. So I'm kind of in flux. But anyway, so I escaped. And why did I escape? I was always wondering, like, it was more of an escape than an adventure because it was difficult. It was really difficult at 17, move 10,000 kilometers away and be in a completely different culture, speaking English really basic, and and having to go through academia and all that. So that was hard. But I realized that pain of that was better than going back home, which was really abusive, very abusive environment. So what happened is, because I didn't know that that was my core issue, is I ended up attracting really bad relationships, and so I was looking to be saved. Again, I was looking for somebody to come in and provide some relief, because life was hard. I was struggling. I was carrying the old wounds with myself, and I wanted somebody else to resolve them for me instead of me resolving them myself. So, and I would never get, that objective advice that I had mentioned earlier from anyone. Instead, I felt the pressure to settle down and do the normal thing, right? And that did not work. So if you're in that place when you feel yourself, oh, I'm in my 40s, even 50s, and I feel like my life is not together, don't even worry about that, because it's not about the outside and what it looks like on the outside. It's not about that. There's so many people who look like they have the perfect family, but when you look deeper, there's so much pain and abuse that goes on behind closed doors. So don't think for a moment that everybody else is living a Hollywood movie, because they're not. None of us really are. Life is full of struggle and growth. The key is to create a life for yourself where you feel sovereign, where you feel like you have self-respect, and therefore you can extend that respect to other people and you expect respect back. It's really that simple. If I were to sum it up to, the bare essentials, that's that. And then your whole life is wide open. You can explore this, you can explore that, you can still have a family, you can still do that. It's like whatever floats your boat. But you gotta have those core, fundamental, psychological building blocks intact. So what you want to do is kind of like third part of the video now, is you want to work towards wholeness, creating wholeness within yourself. Again, it's back to that becoming a complement for someone, as opposed to in your future relationship. Not right now. Like if you're just going through this, don't even think about the next relationship. This is all about you. You want to create a relationship with you. That should be your priority right now. And you need at least a year. I would say that's really helpful. Like mark your calendar, no dating until like a year after your big blow, until the day you went no contact. Because sometimes it can kind of prolong, right? Like we can go back and come back and do that back and forth, and you don't want to do that. It's from the moment you decide, this is it, no more. I'm changing direction. I want something else. Universe, here's my statement, no more of this. And as bad as it's going to feel, because it's going to suck, it's going to feel bad. As bad as it feels, you're going to hold that container, you're going to hold tight, you're going to build your strength, and you're going to make it. So anyway, so you want to work on your self-esteem and bring up your wholeness, and self-esteem is really key here. And I made some videos about self-love and self-esteem back when I was in Slovenia last summer, so check it out. I think there's some valuable advice there. But real quick, so I came up with this really simple exercise that you can do right now, right after you finish watching this video, or you can pause it and do it as I'm guiding you through it. That is going to really help you to grow your self-esteem and how you feel about yourself, because wholeness comes from that. The more you're able to fill yourself up with your own high regard for yourself, the more you're going to shine, right? The more you're going to shine, and the more you're going to repel all of those nasties, all of those parasites, because your radiance will get so big, they'll get burned. They won't be able to even come close. So how do you do it? It's two-step process. It's super easy. It's called celebrate and actualize. Celebrate and actualize. So here's what you do. You're going to pull out a piece of paper and you're going to split it in half. And on one side of the paper, you're going to have to be really honest with yourself right here. You're going to list several qualities about yourself that you really like, that you really love, at least 3. So you're going to list those down. Could be, I'm a loyal person. Could be, I'm good-hearted. It could be, I'm curious. It could be, I'm agile, I'm flexible. It could be a physical quality, right? Or it could be, or I love my blue eyes, or it could be, I like how muscly I am, right? If you're a guy, so you love to work out, and it's something that's, become part of your life, something that's important to you, like acknowledge that that's what you do, and that's important to you. Or I love nature. I love how I connect with nature. I love that ability inside myself. So whatever comes to mind, write that down. And then on the other side of the paper, say the things I dislike about myself, right? So we're getting honest here, and we're going to do an upgrade. So you're going to write down things like maybe I feel like I'm lazy, or I feel like I'm too weak, or I feel like I'm not smart enough because I didn't go to school, or, and we're going to get in a moment to like really challenging some of these beliefs, because oftentimes they're like bullshit, things we don't like about ourselves, but sometimes they're accurate. Like there may be some truth, like you could be doing a little bit more on growing yourself, and that's what's going to give you that self-esteem. It doesn't come out of thin air. It comes from taking action. So here's what I want you to do. Once you have your list, say three yeses and 3 nos, 3 likes and 3 dislikes, what I'd like you to do is take 1 minute, you can set your timer, and really sit with 1 or 2 or 3 or more of those qualities that you like, and learn to celebrate them. Just make it a daily practice. I would stand in front of the mirror and look at yourself and say, I really value you for being so open and curious. I really value you for working so hard at the gym every day and putting your blood, sweat, and tears no matter what, not missing a beat. I really love what a dedicated teacher you are. I really love what an amazing mother I am, right? So like these things, and like let it soak in, like 1 minute, it's all it takes, but do it regularly. I'd like to challenge you to do it for 1 week, every morning if you can, or even more often. You may notice it happened to me. Whenever I would pass by a mirror, I would like walk by and I would look at myself and just say, I love you, and keep walking. And it was so nice, because what does that do? That teaches us to have a positive self-dialogue. And that is such a key thing, because after abuse, we have internalized so many negative, and it's both from home and from the relationship, so many negative thoughts about ourselves. We've been so put down. Our best qualities have been at first inflated and then challenged and destroyed. And we're walking around with these deep wounds, emotional and mental wounds, and they're haunting us. So this is a way to start to retrain your nervous system so that you pay less attention to all those things and recognize, like, that's not my thought. Fuck off. I don't need this. And be more like, I really value you for, like right away overwrite that thought. Now, on to the next part. It's all about actualizing. So first part was celebrating. Second part is actualizing. So perhaps there is something you could do. Perhaps you there's something that your intuition is telling you that you could work on. And working on ourselves is a great way to shift our mind from thinking about the past and the abuse towards something new. So you want to create that pivot point. Yeah, you're still working with the past, you're still working on what happened, and that's good. And we need to do that. We need to understand why, all that stuff. That's good. We want to balance that with moving forward and doing some other things. Maybe learning an instrument, maybe learning a new language, maybe taking a trip somewhere. I gotta tell you, like, my travel this summer has been so healing. I just jumped on a train and I went down to the Balkans, and I went to new countries and I met new people, and it was kind of scary. There are definitely some scary parts about this, and you're landed in a new town and you're like, oh shit, I don't know where anything is. But then sooner you orient yourself, and it builds these new neural connections in your brain, and it allows you to heal faster. So it's a really phenomenal thing to do something new. Or maybe there's something that you could work on with respect to, you do feel like you could improve your physique, so you start taking walks every day. I start nice and easy. Remember, your energy is depleted in the beginning, so don't overdo it. Take it one step at a time. Maybe your diet could use an uplift, right? Maybe it's a good time to start doing some meditation and start quieting the mind. Maybe there's some books you've been wanting to read, but you haven't gotten to it. Maybe there's a story in your mind, in your heart, that you've been wanting to share with the world. Now might be a good time to start on it. Start on something creative, something new. So that's the actualized thing, right? So if you don't like how you look, you can always change it, right? And but let's not get too much into that, the stuff like, I am this. We're all imperfect. As Pia Melody says it, I love that. She says, we're all perfectly imperfect. That's what humanity is all about. We're perfectly imperfect, because whose standard of perfection are we following here? Everybody's going to have a different one. So you'll never be able to fulfill anyone, let alone yourself. And we're our worst critics. So, come up with something that's really real. For instance, if you're severely overweight, it might be a good idea. Or if you're smoking, to quit cigarettes. and to pick up a healthier lifestyle, you'll feel better, you'll live longer, and it's going to give you that self-esteem boost you're looking for. Or perhaps it's something that deals with your productivity. You know, maybe there's a project you've started, but you've been slacking off on it, and it's been like haunting you. So, hey, do it now. Do it for you. Do it for you. That's the key. Do it for you. So celebrate, actualize. That is going to help you become your own savior, right? You're going to save yourself. That's my message to you. Do not wait for the knight to save you. Don't be the princess waiting to be saved, right? Enough with that. That's an old myth that has to die, has to be challenged. And this is a new era of self-empowerment. And if you do not know where to begin, as I always say, listen to your intuition and learn to follow your inner compass. It knows the best how you can take your steps forward into your future. And of course, I'm here cheering you on, wishing you all the best. Take care. I hope this video helped you. Share in the comments down below some of your ideas of how you've learned to, what you're doing to uplift your self-esteem, and any other subconscious beliefs perhaps that you have absorbed that you haven't challenged up until now. So celebrate this process. This is a sacred, sacred, sacred process. I know it's difficult, especially if you have kids, especially if you have to go through this nightmare. It's horrible, but I promise you, I'm seeing this with so many success stories, and they're all pretty much success stories. The key is to keep going. As long as you put one foot in front of the other and slowly get out of that abusive situation, you're going to get there. You're going to get there. It's one step at a time. The worst thing you can do is don't try. The worst thing you can do is stay in it and let them take your light, let them take your energy, and let them, control you. And you deserve so much more. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off. But again, sending you much love from Poland. And I'll be checking in with you soon with another video.